Hmm. You caught me drinking coffee. I hope I have a good connection today because I'm still in the condominium in Palm Springs and I'm getting ready to fly out back home. And the internet, we're not on the fastest internet, so hopefully it doesn't, give us some problems. But I was thinking about creativity today. How are you doing this morning? Um, what got me thinking about creativity was there's this book that I've been wanting to read for a long, long time. It's called The Artist's Way, and it's written by Julia Cameron. Forward is by Natalie Goldberg. This book here, I'd heard about this book for a long time, and I really only cracked it a little bit. But even going through the forward and then the introduction, it really struck me how important this whole concept of being an artist is, because I didn't really ever think of myself as an artist. Do you think of yourself as an artist? Um, you know, what is an artist? And I was having a conversation with JP Tremblay, and we were talking about some of our processes in our business and how we're managing money. So, with new technology, we have the ability to run like tons of portfolios using uh, kind of robo advice technology. Basically, it's the back end of a robo advised platform that we have access to through an institutional platform, and so we can put all of our target weights in there and manage tons and tons of accounts. And there's algorithms that help with that. And I told him, we can keep doing our art. We're just using the technology to leverage our time. And he was struck by the concept of art, and I guess he thought that was hilarious. But then I started thinking about it. Yeah, we really are artists. I was just kind of thinking about what is art, and that's creating nothing or something from nothing. And when you think about it in science, there's always this conversation that nothing. There always has to be a first reactor. There has to be something that exists that turns into something else, and there's some process that turns it into something else. So in other words, you can't have something from nothing. But I would argue that that's false. That there you can create something from nothing as a human being, because our thoughts turn into actions, which turn into things. Now we may affect objects, material things with our thoughts that create things, but the thought itself is not something that you think of as material. And we don't really we can work on instinct, where we're kind of like an animal, where I'm hungry so I go eat, or other desires that you have. But then there's this other side to being a human being that is completely art and completely creative. And so I'm wondering if you feel like a creative person or not. And one of the things that she talks in this book, Julia Cameron talks about in this book, right at the get go, she says that, you just need to tap into your artist side, and that everybody is basically creative. And I agree with that 100%. Being creative is so important because people think of themselves as not being creative. But just in the last week, I was looking at what I was doing. I keep a journal. And just in the last week, I did a ton of things. Do you keep a journal? I If you do, let me know. I think that's something that everybody should do. But when I was going through what I did last week, it was all over the map. I did stuff, even spiritual stuff, things with regard to scripture. I studied some things that were curious to me and wrote down some things. I I worked on naming things. We're putting together a new get started video to answer questions for people in a video. And you have to name the video, you have to create the script. You have to be creative with who you talk to, what you do. Um, you have to be creative. We were working on our marketing schedule because we're working with a group that does our marketing, and it's like, well, how often are you going to do this? What are you going to do? That's all creativity. You know, even working on, I was working on various investments. One of the things that I worked on was what is the real rate of return of these rental properties that I've seen clients have over the years in my personal experience with having a rental property. Um, and it became real clear that there was some creativity into actually saying, okay, how do you frame that and come up with, there's a lot of numbers and scientific type work, like what is the actual return and money and compounding and timing and all that, taxes. But the creativity of actually putting that together is so huge. So what are you creative about? What are you doing that's going to actually make a difference? So I started thinking about, well, okay, yeah, we all have this creativity, but what can we do with it? That's the real issue, is what are you doing and what am I doing with our creativity? Are we creating something that is valuable for other people? Sometimes I think you create things that are valuable for other people, but people aren't there or don't know that it's valuable. So it's your job to also figure out, how do you create the understanding that this is valuable, that they should perceive it as valuable. And that's an art in and of itself. There's certain people that are so good at just enticing people to see that something could be valuable. Now, unfortunately, that's misused a lot of times, and people wind up not necessarily having something of value at that end of that rainbow. So, I mean, it's like clickbait. If you go and you click on clickbait, you jump into clickbait, it's, the end result was not something that was important to you. But I want to tell you why I think this video is important to you and to me and to everybody. It's just a simple realization of who we are. We are creative animals, and we're not really animals. We're created human beings. And with that creativity, we have a ton of power, what we can do with our creativity. So I encourage you to be more creative, to think about yourself as a creative animal, creative human being, and pick up this book, The Artist Way, and get in the mindset of being a creative person. So I always have a lot of respect for creative people. I have some friends that are artists, like true artists, like they paint. And you go, wow, that's incredible. I mean, just to, first of all, to take the time and to spend the time to do that. And just to say at the end of that process, say, this here, look, this is what I made. And I made it, for you. And do you like it? And it's reminds me of Seth Godin, who has a book called The Practice, which is another book I highly recommend to read. He talks about how, you make something and you have no idea whether or not somebody's going to like it. But if you're authentic, then it makes a huge difference. So that's the other thing about being creative. If you're not authentic, you're just wasting a ton of time. I'll tell you a quick story. So we were going through all of our marketing data, like all the information that we have sent out to people, articles and things like that. And we work with companies that are called curators that look at and write content. And sometimes we send out content from them that we think is interesting. And what was very interesting to us is we found out that most of the people who actually clicked on it were not well, first of all, there was not as many clicks on those curated content rather than the content we created. The content that we created had like 5 times as many opens and 5 times as many comments, 5 times as many clicks. And it made me realize, I think people know when something's not authentic, like it's from somebody else. It was good information, and we thought it'd be helpful to give to people. So for that reason, we've just kind of made a decision. It's like we're going to have a call. It's like, you know what? We don't want to send that out. I want to send something out that's authentic, that is from our thinking, that we think is important. And that way you see what you get and you get what you see, right? It's not like something fake. So I know I've seen things that are fake all the time when you get online. They've got all these glitzy pictures and all these crazy buttons and all this stuff to kind of go, ooh, wow, look at that shiny object. But then you go behind it and it's a script that's not authentic. There's nothing wrong with scripting and having an outline. I think that's important so that you can convey in a logical fashion. When you write a book, you have to have an outline. In fact, if you don't start with the outline, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. And you can pull from things and then create outlines from content that you write ad hoc. But once you actually get serious about writing a book, you have to have that outline because that leads you down a path. But if it's an inauthentic path, if it's an inauthentic process, then people sense that and they go, So if you ever create content and you're using a bunch of other people's things, or trying to be like somebody else when you're in business or with your friends or family, nobody wants that really. What people really want is the real you. And I know people might find this to be boring, but I actually think this is really, really important because you're finding your own voice and you're finding who you are. You know, just kind of flipping through, looking at what I did last week, the breadth of creativity that you can have. So we had creativity about numbers and finance, creativity about like scriptural or spiritual things, creativity about with marketing and content creation. Um, and then I was worked on last week. I worked on some things that were kind of planning oriented. How you're going to work out a process, for example. One of the things that I worked on over the last week was creating a financial model for a new idea of how to deliver a service, and that's something coming from nothing. That's art, and that financial model had to do with what exactly, how many people are going to be in the system, what's the pricing, how do you deliver it. So creativity is a huge thing, and so some people find this kind of conversation boring, but I think if the communication that you have and the artistic side of you is the most important side. All right, so that's it for now. I'm getting ready to hightail it back to Denver. We had a snowstorm, and my wife left early. Here's an interesting thing. My wife left early with the kids because my kids were very upset that they were going to miss the first day of school. And the first day of school, they get their assigned seating. So because they were getting their assigned seating, they didn't want to sit next to people that they didn't know for the whole rest of the semester. So they really were upset. So my wife changed the flight last minute. She told me at 4:00 in the morning yesterday that they were going to go home. And of course, they're home now. And then what did it do? It snowed. It snowed like crazy. And now they're delayed to go to school this morning, their first day of school back. So you got to be adapt. There's another creative thing for you. All right. I've got things to do. I know you do too. And enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good day.